Emergency election announcement. This election needs a bit of gingering up. Thus far, it is the dullest, most boring election campaign we have ever seen in our lives.
You're all right!
You in Scotland, of all places, I mean, look, the NHS is very badly run.
Open
doors, everyone come.
Of course we need
Everyone
rules.
come.
Of course we need
Benefits
rules.
for everybody, lovely.
It certainly wasn't a day for staged photo ops as we saw from Nigel
No,
Farage.
hang on a second. I raised £100,000. I raised £100,000 for the London Taxi Charity to send veterans back to Normandy. That's why I was there. Thank you. Reform UK is about to become a political phenomenon, an historic one. So I urge you, join the revolt. Perhaps more important than that,
You cannot barrage the Farage.
Who is on their way to number 10? Full-on Farage has been making the Conservatives very nervous. We'll hear from John Curtis, of course, who will give us his 60 seconds on Sunday, his need-to-know on the polls.
Now, as many as 1 in 4 2019 Tory voters are saying they will back reform.
But Nigel Farage joins us from Essex this morning. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
Mr. Farage, if you get what you want in this campaign and you grab millions of former Tory voters, you're making it easier for Keir Starmer to get to number 10. Why do you want him to be Prime Minister?
I don't particularly, but I have to say the Conservatives have broken trust with the country, repeated promises in manifesto after manifesto to reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year, and now they've opened the doors to such a scale. Do you know that 1 in 30 people in this country today has come here in the last 2 years? The numbers are astonishing, the breach of trust is huge, and it's a total betrayal of all of those people that lent their vote to the Conservatives in 2019. And I do believe this should be the immigration election. The exploding population is impacting on housing, on rents, on the health service, on infrastructure, and the other two parties don't want to talk about it.
But some Conservatives, Mr. Farage, believe what you are doing also adds up to a betrayal, because the logic of you running in this campaign in the way that you are makes it much easier, potentially, for Keir Starmer to get to number 10. So I'll ask you again, why do you want him to be the Prime Minister?
Okay.
Oh no. How she managed to barrage the Farage?
Taking out polling companies like Savanta, who don't even prompt for reform, which is outrageous, opinion the same. If you look at the other polls, in the red wall, Reform are ahead of the Conservatives and are now the challengers to Labour. If you look in Wales, it is now neck and neck between us and the Conservatives. So in the red wall, a Conservative vote is a vote to put Labour in. Frankly, let's be honest, the election's over. Labour have won already.
Remember that in this stage in 2017, Theresa May, a month out, was absolutely miles ahead in the polls. It looked like she was cruising to victory. You are taking voters' decisions for granted and claiming that you can be the real opposition. Is that credible?
I tell you what, if you went outside London and you met people in this constituency and others around the country who voted Conservative for the first time in 2019, they're loathing for the Conservative Party as such. There is no chance of them going back.
Some of the policies that Reform is putting over. You took over the leadership rather dramatically this week, having said you wouldn't run. You are now running, but I think not everybody is familiar yet with your policies. Now, in Reform's contract with the people, you call for £50 billion worth of spending cuts. So which public services would you get rid of?
Labour, the Conservatives and the other two parties.
I think viewers would like to know this morning, your party's already saying you'll cut £50 billion of public spending. So which public services would you get rid of?
Yeah, getting rid of Labour, the Conservatives and the other two parties.
Conservative Way Forward, the group have looked at this and they say the most that you could get back would be 427 million, which out of cuts of 50 billion, that's a drop in the ocean.
Well, OK. All right, I'll go on. The inheritance tax threshold should be raised to 2 million. We will go on with other areas like that. Mass simplification of the tax system, which will bring us enormous savings.
In terms of other things that you might want to do, you said on Friday, and you've mentioned this morning, you'd like to reform the NHS and you'd like to have a French model. Now, in France, there are upfront costs that people have to pay. They get some of it back, but not all of it. Is that what you would like to see in this country, where people have to pay upfront for their healthcare?
Let's be clear. We want healthcare to be free at the point of delivery. That was the founding principle of the National Health Service. What we're not having a debate about is this. We've gone up from just a few years ago, spending 7.5% of our national cake to 11% of the national cake on health. And guess what? The delivery has got worse, waiting lists have gone up. This model is not working.
I want to ask you about the Prime Minister's early exit from the D-Day commemorations this week. After that, you said that he wasn't patriotic, and you said that Rishi Sunak didn't understand our history and our culture. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Absolutely right. He couldn't make a mistake over D-Day. He should have known in his heart that it was right to be there. I was there. I've been raising money for some weeks to send veterans back to Normandy. The vast majority of people in Britain felt this commemoration was important and the last opportunity to honour the remnants that are still alive. And by the way, I know what your question's leading at. 40% of our contribution in World War I and World War II came from the Commonwealth.
But Mr Farage, when you say our culture, I think many of our viewers might imagine that you are trying, not very subtly, to emphasise the Prime Minister's immigrant heritage.
Yeah, I just made the point. 40% of our contribution in 2 wars came from the Commonwealth. Clearly, Mr Sunak doesn't understand that. And what an insult to the Americans. The man is not fit to lead the country.
The Sunday Times today is carrying a story about one of your aides and colleagues, George Cottrell, who has a conviction for wire fraud in the America and has been named in another criminal investigation in Montenegro. Do you want him by your side on the campaign trail?
I, firstly, always stand by my friends. And secondly, there is a thing called Christian forgiveness. If people get convicted of something or do something wrong, well, they have another chance in life to go on and prove themselves.
Mr Farage, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Clacton Pier, I think, where you are standing for election. And there is Professor John Curtis, the nation's favourite number cruncher, is keeping an eye on the polls.
Every poll conducted since Monday's dramatic announcement that Nigel Farage was to return as Reform's leader has recorded a rise in Reform support, on average by 3 points.
We're going to wave you goodbye.